Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and good to see you here. So, well, we've been talking the last couple weeks about this Mountains and Waters Sutra of Eihei Dogen's Zen teacher Eihei Dogen, and as we've talked about previously, it's not a sutra or teaching about mountains and waters. It's an exhortation by Master Dogen to listen and observe the teachings of mountains and the teachings of waters. So each little section kind of builds on the previous sections. There's some overlap, but there's always a new idea that comes across with each section, or a new perspective. So I think we'll just dive right into the section we'll be talking about today. Those of you who have missed prior sections will be a little confused by this mountains walking talk, but it'll become more clear. Because green mountains walk, they are permanent. Although they walk more swiftly than the wind, someone in the mountains does not realize or understand it. In the mountains means the blossoming of the entire world. People outside the mountains do not realize or understand the mountains walking. Those without eyes to see mountains cannot realize, understand, see, or hear this as it is. If you doubt mountains walking, you do not know your own walking. It is not that you do not walk, but you do not know or understand your own walking. Since you do not know your own walking, you should fully know the green mountains walking. Green mountains are neither sentient nor insentient. You are neither sentient nor insentient. At this moment, you cannot doubt the green mountains walking. So this is a fairly dense little section. And there are a couple allusions that commentators such as Shohaku Okamura have noted, and Kaz Tanahashi have noted, that I think help a bit with our understanding this in English as translated from Dogen's Japanese. I guess the one point to make about this is this first sentence, which may be confusing. Because green mountains walk, they are permanent. Now, those of you who are familiar with some of the fundamentals of Buddhist teachings are going to stop on that and wonder, well, hey, wait a minute, mountains aren't permanent. We all know this. I mean, even a school child knows that mountains are not permanent. They arise out of conditions, out of collision of tectonic plates, heat beneath the surface of the earth, and they arise and they are eroded away or in some way collapse, perhaps due to an earthquake or something. But They're not permanent. And in fact, according to traditional Buddhist teachings, all conditioned things are impermanent. So what's this permanent thing going? There is clearly other translators have tried to deal with this. Tanahashi deals with it by using the word permanent because it's the most literal translation from Japanese, as I understand it. But he uses permanent in a particular way to mean outside of the realm of time. Outside of the realm of time. The mountains walk outside of the realm of time, and not our usual understanding of the word permanent. Sort of our linear time understanding. Other translators have just used a different word. For instance, Bielefeld, who translated this work, translates these lines as, because the blue mountains, he uses blue instead of green, colored mountains, but he chooses a different color. Because the blue mountains are walking, they are constant. Because the blue mountains are walking, they are constant. Which seems to perhaps be not so confusing. Constant in their expression, constant in their mountainness, because their mountains are expressing their mountainness, they are constantly expressing their mountainness, their life force. They are constantly in their Dharma position as mountains. And then Dogen goes on that although they walk more swiftly than the wind, someone in the mountains does not realize or understand it. Now, and then he says, in the mountains means the blossoming of the entire world. So there's a couple things packed into there that are helpful in perhaps guiding us toward the message that Dogen was trying to express. Although they walk more swiftly than the wind. Swiftly than the wind is a phrase picked up from the Lotus Sutra. We've talked previously about how there's this story in the Lotus Sutra about how the father is trying to get his children out of a burning house. He's standing outside, but his children are inside. They're playing, they're distracted, they're not paying attention. They don't realize the house is burning. He's trying to lure them out of the house. He can't get in to just save them because the doorway is blocked or some sort of thing. But in any case, he lures them out of the house by telling them that there are 3 carts. There are 3 children. So there are 3 carts. Each have their own cart, and it's pulled by their favorite animals. And that is a successful strategy, and they come out of the house looking for the carts. But instead of having the 3 carts pulled by their favorite animals, he has for them one just magnificent cart pulled by a white ox. And it is said that the white ox is described as being swifter than the wind, or as fast as the wind. So the cart and the ox are, in the story in the Lotus Sutra, is supposed to represent the ultimate Buddhist teaching, the teachings of the Buddha as fully expressed, the Dharma, in other words. And the swift as the wind means that, in no time, you can arrive at awakening through an understanding or a fully having the Dharma penetrate your being. So someone, so walking, as they walk more swiftly than the wind, he's sort of equating the mountains with the Dharma. And someone in the mountains doesn't realize it, because when you're in the midst of something, you don't pay attention to what you're in the midst of. You're just in the midst of it. You're doing it. You don't separate yourself from your surroundings. When you're in the midst of the mountains, you don't see the mountains as mountains. So, but then he goes on, in the mountains means the blossoming of the entire world. And here again, there's an allusion that's important in this sentence, this blossoming of the entire world. And it refers to a poem that his students, his Zen students, would be familiar with. It's a story about the awakening of Bodhidharma, who was supposedly brought Buddhism to China and is considered the first Chan teacher or Zen teacher. And Bodhidharma's teacher was Prajnatara. And it's interesting that Prajnatara, many scholars think that Prajnatara was actually a woman, since Tara is a woman's name, and her name is a compound of Prajna and Tara. But in any case, the poem related to Bodhidharma's awakening goes like this. From mind ground seeds sprout. From mind ground seeds sprout. Truth appears as all forms. The fruit is full. Bodhi, or awakening, is complete. The world of blossoming flowers arises. From mind ground, seeds sprout. Truth appears as all forms. The fruit is full. Bodhi is complete. The world of blossoming flowers arises. So that in the mountains is referring to awakening. Being present in the mountains is being awake, being transformed by Dharma, seeing with the eye of Dharma. So he goes on, people outside the mountains don't understand the mountains walking. Those without eyes to see this functioning of mountains, this Dharma position of mountains, cannot realize, understand, see, or hear it as it is. In other words, they relate to the mountains just as a dead rock. But Dogen says, if you doubt mountains walking, you do not know your own walking. You don't understand your own Dharma position. You don't understand your own role. You aren't fully playing your part. It is not that you don't walk, you're moving, but you don't understand your own situation. Since you do not know your own walking, you should fully try to know the Green Mountains walking. Green Mountains are neither sentient nor insentient. You are neither sentient nor insentient. At this moment, you cannot doubt the Green Mountains walking. So I guess I've come to understand so far in this that the walking for me is an expression of one's life force. If we truly see the mountains, we see their expression of their mountainness, their life force, their Dharma position as mountains. And if we fully see ourselves, then that results in an expression of our life force, our Dharma position, and it results in our playing our part. Now, this thing about mountains are not sentient nor insentient, we're not sentient nor insentient. This Dogen likes to make startling remarks to sort of catch us off guard and challenge our assumptions. So we all think our usual way of thinking is that, what is sentient? It has to do with senses, and some organisms have sense organs, and others don't seem to. We think of animals and humans as being sentient, being able to sense things. We think of maybe even insects as being sentient to a certain extent, but we don't think of plants or grasses or trees, or certainly not rocks, as being sentient. On the other hand, to think that we're insentient just is kind of startling. I mean, if we're insentient, who's not? So, but I think what Dogen is trying to do is to move us out of our self-centered worldview. Our self-centered worldview is I guess one perhaps illustrated by the Cartesian fallacy. I think, therefore I am. This is a strong current in Western thinking. I think, therefore I am. To just, okay, if I need to make sure that I'm really here, just pay attention to the fact that I'm thinking. And if I'm thinking proves it. Well, actually, I am thinking incorporates an assumption already that there is an I that is thinking. The actual phenomena is just thinking. So this I am thinking really proves no more than just thinking is happening. It doesn't even establish an I. So there is thinking. I am experiencing thinking, but that's all we know. In traditional Buddhist teachings, there are the phenomenon of sensing something involves a sense organ, it involves an object, and it involves a consciousness, sort of binding the sense organ to the object. And sensing just doesn't occur unless there's an object. You can't hear something unless there's a sound. You can't see something unless there is something out there. And if you want to prove this, I mean, you can just cover your eyes and you don't see anything. So there has to be contact between the sense organ and the object. And lacking that there can be no consciousness of any sensual phenomenon. Well, this idea is, I don't really know the history, and perhaps some of you do, about where the late 19th century, early 20th century philosophers who expounded what we now call phenomenology, where that all, the origins of that. I know Husserl was important as an originator, and that Merleau-Ponty was an expounder of phenomenology. But it occurred to me because Carol brought this booklet about an art exhibit that's occurring in Elsa, Illinois, by two landscape painters. The two landscape painters are David Cowtrey and Duncan Martin. And they had a project of 58 in 58. They went to 58 state or national parks in 58 weeks and did a painting at each one. A monumental project, but they completed it. And Paul Ryan, a colleague of theirs, arranged an exhibit of their works, which is, I think, on display now, and also put together a booklet kind of talking about landscape painting and putting their works into context. And one person he quotes heavily is a writer, David Abram, who wrote The Spell of the Sensuous. David Abram is a living philosopher who is known for his environmental views and his further elucidation of phenomenological philosophy. And there's a quote from David Abram that I think sort of speaks to what Dogen is talking about. Perception in Merleau-Ponty's work is precisely this reciprocity, the ongoing interchange between my body and the entities that surround it. It is a sort of silent conversation that I carry on with things, a continuous dialogue that unfolds far below my verbal awareness, and often even independent of my verbal awareness. Whenever I quiet the persistent chatter of words within my head, I find this silent or wordless dance already going on. This improvised duet between my animal body and the fluid, breathing landscape that it inhabits. This improvised duet between my animal body and the fluid, breathing landscape that it inhabits. So when we regard one party of the sensual experience as sentient and the other as insentient, we create a kind of dichotomy, a kind of hierarchy. The potential for possession that is seen in something that Bill quoted from Genesis a while back during one of our discussions about humans having dominion over the fishes in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the creeping things that creepeth on the earth. So Dogen is wanting to look at us to look at things in a different way. He would like us to view things with the eye of Dharma. And he's inviting us to do this, aided by our practice in Zazen, which stills the body, stills the mind, and exposes that train of assumptions that pass through constantly. I think that artists are involved in this same kind of process. And another landscape artist, very well known, I'm sure, to some of you, John Marin, is quoted in this booklet by Paul Ryan as well. It's a short quote. How to paint a landscape. First, you make your bow to the landscape. Then you wait. And if the landscape bows to you, then and only then can you paint the landscape. So what would it be like if we viewed the world more in this way? Well, it would be a lot different. What it would be like if we viewed our house, our apartment, our neighborhood, the trees outside, all the people we encounter, ourselves in this way. Actually, David Abram speaks in a favorable way about animism, the belief of spirits in what we consider inanimate objects as possessing some wisdom that we have left behind. And we don't necessarily have to posit spirits in order to regain that wisdom. But Dogen is encouraging us to do this, as well as some of these other modern thinkers. So I guess I would encourage us to think about how can we apply this? How can we change our views, or at least have access to this other way of thinking? Clearly, we need to have, a conventional way of thinking to sort of get through the world, but confining ourselves to that is stultifying. I guess I would like to leave you with that, and it can be discussed in the smaller groups, but I'd like to finish up with just a few seconds of sharing the screen with and show you some of these landscapes. The first is by John Marin, and the second is by David Cowtree, and the third by Duncan Martin. I'll dwell on them for a couple seconds or a few seconds each, so you get a chance to absorb them. So each of these three artists expressing their humanness, coupling with the mountainness of the mountains. So we'll break up into smaller groups and see what thoughts come out of all of this, and reconnect in a few minutes.